I'm Jesse and I'm running LoveCry.
And I'm Anthony. I'm volunteering with LoveCry. And it might be time for us to talk about the birds and the bees. We're gonna talk about a subject. Um, and there's a lot of things to talk about. It. So the topic is sex, right? If you think about what sells a headline, so like people that editors that are writing headlines or whatever. So if there's death or if there's sex, then it's a catchy headline, right? And sex is used in marketing. So sex is a very powerful thing. And you were talking earlier about friends with benefits, and back in the old days, sex was seen as a big deal. So if you're not married, you shouldn't do it. And today, people are modern, like, oh, we don't have to be married. Sex is just sex. It's just like enjoying yourself, and everything's good. So we had a video where we talked about like thoughts. So if you have a thought, is it your thought or is it someone else's thought? And so you were saying that sex is a very powerful link that you make with someone,
Yeah,
whether you want to or not,
yeah, yeah,
right? So it's creating a powerful link.
yeah.
And so if you have like random sex or sex with someone you don't really know, or like you don't know where they're coming from or whatever, like, so this modern concept where sex is just, just be modern. Sex is just, it's just adults, and it doesn't mean anything.
Yeah, because if they don't know themselves as well, and then you also get into a relationship with them, they don't, and you don't know yourself, or even not a
Well, not even a
relationship,
relationship, but just
just yeah,
you
just to
just
have
do some
sex.
jiggy jiggy with
Um,
someone that has unfinished business emotionally.
yeah, you're now mixing that with your own energy field, and especially like if you get into problems or upset with them, there's going to be other judgments, negativity, feelings towards yourself, where it also leads to like suicide, like self-judgment, self-hatred, because it could get really entrenched inside yourself when someone doesn't love you back, and you start pleading and like like you're kind of like begging for them to love you, um, which is a hard thing to get out of as well, because when you get stuck in that point of trying to prove that you love someone and then you think it's your fault why they don't love you,
Which is
it's
linking into damage that we all have. Like, we all have some kind of damage that I'm not good enough, I'm not lovable, I'm not worthy. And so, if you have any kind of sexual relationship with somebody, it could be like friends with benefits, we're all cool. But as you were saying also that, it very easily can slip into like one person is more into it than the other,
and
or
and usually when it's all cool, they're not it's like they're both not in tune with who they are, so they think it's cool because they're getting a sexual gratification, they're getting some kind of stimulus rather than that the painful feeling, the negative feeling that they have.
so in a sense, one thing that I was remarking on earlier was that sex is intimate, but people can have sex and it's not intimate. It's not at all intimate, but physically and emotionally, it is, as you said, it's an intertwining of two energies. So whether you want it to be intimate or not, it actually is. And you've got like a hotline between your psyche and their unfinished business and your unfinished business. And they can have all these thoughts and feelings that may or may not be your own. So that person, that person's unfinished business might be manifesting within you and saying, oh, I'm not good enough for them, or I wanted more and I'm getting less. Like, is that really how you feel, or has that been implanted from the other person? So it's a thing to be careful. Like, it's actually a great idea to be really careful about who are you going to have sex with, and how do you guys relate to each other, and knowing where they're at before you take that step, because it's like really.
And people could be just giving you and saying what you want to hear so they could get that from you,
Oh
you
my
know
God.
so
So,
that
and I roll my eyes because, like, so I have a friend who will remain unnamed. That's a tongue twister. And he was telling me about a friend of his. So, this friend of a friend will tell a woman anything she wants to hear. Like, he told me an example where he's crying on the phone with her, like, I've never felt like this about someone, because he wants to get a piece. Okay. So, he gets a piece of ass, he's gone. So it was all an act. Now, if a woman, and this brings me to another point, so please remind me about the 2 month point. If she doesn't know where he's really coming from, if you give that guy some time, you'll suss out some of his lying, right? Because But if it's just like in the beginning, and you're just saying whatever you want, and you want to experience those things, and then like imagine the pain or anger, sadness, or everything all mixed together that this woman's feeling when this guy's gonzo because that's all he wanted. He wanted to hit it and quit it, but he's saying what he wants, which is incredibly and unbelievably lacking in integrity. But it is what it is, and there's people, and there's women like that too. And now he's doing it consciously, which is why when I heard about this guy, I wanted to choke him. But there's literally, but there's people doing it unconsciously, right? So a woman or a man who wants intimacy, they want that loving feeling, but they're going to play it all cool because they're not really in touch with what they really want, and they pretend that all they want is an FWB, and that's not what they really want, and then it gets messy.
And then I would say also that and when we say intentionally, like it may be intentional for what he's trying to get, but he doesn't, I don't think, understand the repercussions of the pain he's actually causing towards himself and the others.
Ah,
So it's
mhm,
like it's not fully intentional, because intentions would mean that he would be aware of the pain he's creating within inside himself, and once you're aware of that, there's you don't make that choice.
mhm.
So that awareness is missing. So it's not necessarily intentional. It's intentional to get what he wants, but there's more to what's fueling him to be like that. That's if that makes sense.
No, it
That's,
makes perfect sense, and he's definitely not aware of the harm he's creating on himself. Because if he was,
yeah,
he
they
would.
think it's just hurting the others.
Right.
Like, oh, I feel good. Like but no, you're pleasing your ego, so you obviously don't feel good, and they obviously don't love you for who you are, and that's obviously another fault for yourself that's going to make you feel bad, regardless of if they slept with you or not, because you had to lie to get it.
Mhm.
You know, so
So yeah, sex is. I mean, it's such a powerful thing, and it's not just two people getting their rocks off. And the 2 month rule, and so I have a gay friend with a lot of girlfriends, and they tell him everything, right? And this one friend of his, and he was sharing this with me, was saying, I meet all these men, we're dating, and dating includes sex because in modern terminology, usually dating means we're boinking. Um, but they don't stick around. I want a guy to stick around. I can't get a guy to stick around. So my friend said to her, "Listen, you wait 2 months. Make that guy wait 2 months. I don't care how much ice cubes you have to put down your panties to keep it to keep it in your pants. Like, wait 2 months." And she did. She followed his advice. And I have female friends that I've given this advice to, and they don't follow it. And then they're like, "Oh, he's gone, and I don't know why." I'm like, "Well, did you do what I said, right?" And the next guy she started dating, no sex for 2 months, and he was so into her because there's also, I mean, it's a good idea because if he was a liar, it would have been more likely to come out within those 2 months. So that's a good insurance policy for this woman, right? Another thing is that he perceives her as, there's something in our psyche that when you have to work for something, you value it more, right? So if somebody's like, yo, here's a guitar. Okay, great, thanks. But if you work and save up and then you go and buy that same guitar, you're gonna value it more. So anyway, for her it worked, and so my friend has, like I say, a lot of his female friends sharing stuff with him, and this is what he came up with was the 2 month rule.
but I would think too that like there's some inner things to face there as well, about insecurity for herself, because like for her to need a person to make her feel good about herself, or if someone leaves then that makes me feel bad, then why are they keep leaving? It's not because you're sleeping with them in the first place. Do you know what I'm saying? Like it's that might be like a catalyst, but that's not the reason why it ends up that way. um,
But insecurity could be a reason why people have sex,
oh yeah,
right?
yeah,
As
of
well.
course, yeah.
So they're not having sex because they consciously want to have sex,
No,
but it's because, well, I'm going to keep this person by giving them sex. So
yeah.
it's going to help me, which is completely wrong because, actions need to be integral with who you are and what you have.
Especially something so deep within inside yourself, because these things hit you at your core. So to just give it away and to bypass it like it means nothing, then you're kind of already creating mental health and issues within inside yourself. Like your body is nothing. Whatever you do to your body, who cares? Like as long as they like me, or as long as they do this for me, I'll sacrifice my body,
Mhm.
and that usually leads to self harm, and suicides and things like that.
depression and
Yeah,
self-esteem issues. So the fact is, sex is very meaningful and is very powerful. So we can pretend that it isn't. We can, but pretending something doesn't make it true. So the
yeah.
truth is, sex is a big deal. And so, all the major religions I can think of are telling you to wait and not just do it, casually.
And it
Um,
creates life. So
yeah,
you know,
yeah.
like
So
the only thing that creates life.
so it is very powerful. Um, and so, and it goes with intimacy. So we can pretend sex isn't intimate, but really is. And you can have intimacy, you can have physical intimacy with people, and where 100% of all your clothes. So intimacy is about being present, being aware, being with that other person,
Being
and
vulnerable together.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, that's because when you could be vulnerable with each other and those things, then that's kind of where the key is for um, that type of love and sex. That's where it's going to flourish from. Is from the vulnerabilities, from who we really are, and we accept the whole individual rather than, well, you shouldn't have showed me that. You shouldn't have acted. No,
uh,
that was too much. Okay, I gotta move on. You that crossed the line.
so it's about acceptance. So and what we do inside happens outside. So as we learn to be accepting of ourselves, then we learn to be more accepting of other people. So as we're not accepting of other people, like, oh, here's my laundry list of what I want in a girlfriend or in a boyfriend, and you're not checking off every single thing, so you're gone. So that lack of being real and getting to know a person, and lack of acceptance is going to play out internally too, because then we're going to have a list of what's internal that we're going to accept or not accept about ourselves, and create divorce within ourselves.
And we're always looking for someone with that appeal to us. Like it's never like how's their heart. Like how do we connect this way? It's like, well, they look like that. Okay, they have that. Okay, that could kind of work. I guess I could see myself fitting in there with them, and but you don't even get to know like who that person is. You just have this image of what you want them to be, and then you try to force them to fit that. And then you'll act a certain way. You'll be upset about something to try to confine them to fit that need that you're looking for, and which then also controls and suppresses someone, and that
And
then
that's
turns
not love.
love. Yeah,
That's not love. I mean, not to say that you don't love that person, but that action is really
yeah.
not love at
Yeah,
all.
it's
That
yeah,
action.
yeah.
You
The
may
love
have
is
love
thought.
for them, but that action is not love. And, in the past, pardon me, I've heard you talk a lot about the sex game. And so, what is the sex game? I've heard you say it in reference to different people that we knew, or in different situations. Is that just about like, I'm gonna make this
It's
bond
kind of
work by giving
yeah. It's
sex?
kind
And
of no. It's kind of like it's not even just a sex game. It's like pleasing. It's like people pleasing. Like you just give them everything they want to get what you want. So you'll give up anything to get it. So like one thing would be like you're constantly just like, oh, you're so pretty, or you're so like this, and like you don't really, you're saying it for your own benefit to
for an
gain something.
ulterior
Yeah,
motive,
yeah,
right?
you're not doing it to make the other person feel better. You're doing it so you could get something from them. And then when they don't act a certain way, you treat them poorly. You give them like a negative consequence kind of thing for it, and then you try to like condition them to be a certain way, which takes the love out of it. And then now people are like, oh, but if I don't do this, then they feel a little bit less, they feel a little bit like they're bad people, so then they have to give it to you. So it's almost like raping them, like but then we're so like untuned to like our thoughts and things like that, so that it's not considered rape. It's just considered, well, I just suggested this, or I was just asked this, and yet but the feelings aren't being looked at. And then in a sense, the
Like, you've
celestine.
kind of tricked them into this sexual act, or
Yeah,
into
yeah.
having sex,
And then I
right?
was gonna say like the Celestine Prophecy. There's a book, and then they made a movie on it, and the movie is really good at depicting the energy transfer. So this guy keeps trying to talk to this girl in the movie.
He's trying to pick her up.
Yeah, yeah, he's like likes her, and his energy's all over her, and he's just trying to talk to her, and she gets more and more like pulled down, like like get away, and he doesn't understand what's bothering her, like
Right.
what
I
it
haven't said
is.
anything wrong.
Yes, exactly,
Right.
exactly.
Uh-huh.
And then throughout the movie, he starts to learn different skills and teachings, and then he learns that he's actually like putting his will on her, like trying to force her to what he wants from her instead of just allowing her to be, if that makes sense. So now when you say something to someone, you're kind of like in an expectation of a response or how she should talk to you or what she's going to say. I don't know if I'm explaining that properly, but
Yeah,
that's
it's like the sex game, like this courtship thing where you're like you're you're saying whatever you're saying, and then there's an energy behind it, there's an intent behind it. Like, I want to mold her into my sex doll or into my
yeah,
girlfriend. Like, I want to
yeah. It
make
becomes
her
like a
fit.
trophy,
Yeah, I want to
you
make
know.
her fit into
This
this.
makes me look better, you know.
Right.
Like I
So
don't like, but they're like,
rather than, oh, this person intrigues me, let me get to know this person, what's going on. No, it's like, no, I know what I want them to be.
yeah,
So right, so that's completely the opposite of like, oh, let me find out about this
yeah,
person.
yeah, yeah.
Right.
And then they're not allowed to be their upset self. They can't express their negativity, their anger, or say they feel something. But that is so like atrocious for the other person to even hear. How dare you even say that to me? And
Mhm.
you know, and it's like, well, if you are in a loving, committed relationship, what's being said is by the two of you creating this in your world. So there's a reason why this is being brought up, and if you're just going to be like, oh, this is too, how dare you think of this of me, that is also as well part of the sex game, because you're like, you can't see who I am. You know, like you must be a certain way, and that to me is like, that's sex game. It's control. It's giving me power over you.
But you're also presenting yourself as a certain way to them rather than just being yourself.
Yeah, and most likely those usually end up in like cheating relationships and things like that, because um they're not there for the person. They don't have that connection feeling. They're just running on these other feelings of gratification. Oh, look, I'm wanted. Oh, you still want me anyways, you know, like I'm just that, like, you know, it becomes this egotistical like superiority, you know, like
Like that person serves a purpose for you,
yeah, yeah,
right?
yeah,
Rather
exactly.
than being their own purpose, they
Yeah,
serve a purpose for you.
yeah, yeah. You make my life better. Come here, you know. And once you stop, I get rid of you. You know, and that in itself is part of that game, because you don't take into consideration who that person is or how they feel about themselves or the situation. You're like, you feel like this, and if you don't, I'm gonna be mad at you, and that never leads to a constructive, healthy relationship.
Right on. I mean, unless over time, by some, don't want to use the word miracle, but by they start to, work on themselves and
Yeah,
start to get to
it's
know themselves and
yeah,
start to
it's a great
want to get to know each
yeah.
other on a real basis rather than I don't want I only want to know what I want you to be. No, like I want to know who you
That
actually
was
are,
I
right?
was even in my relationship now. That's how we were at one point, because all the trauma in my life, all the feelings I had, all my anger, like she for me was someone to take care of my daughter, you know, and she needed a good girl role model, and from there, that's where the love started to grow. You know, like I started to see her as like what she was doing rather than what I wanted.
Mm.
We had lots of arguments and fights and things like that, but we worked together and understood like each other's own problems, instead of, oh, you make my life worse, oh, you make this worse, where you can focus on those things, and everything can seem like that, but that's why you have to find the little nitty gritty things, and the little steps, the little things that help the day get by, little things that make you feel good inside yourself, will help with that relationship, because the sex game is prominent within the society, within the world. Watch TV, watch commercials, anything is sex, sex, sex.
And sex game,
Yeah.
you know.
All that's all. Yeah, yeah, exactly. It just impermeates your head, and the more you're caught up by the sexual like pictures and things like that, like they're geared to try to take your attention, and it's awful that advertisements are allowed to use people in that sense, which is also causing mental health issues within the individuals within society. So
Yeah, because then the person becomes a shell. They're like, I am only my shell, rather than like I'm a whole integrated person. And I'm only worth it when my shell is nice.
yeah, 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 exactly. I'm only worth loving then, you know. You know, I'm not worth loving when I'm down. I'm not worth loving when I'm angry, when I'm hurt or upset, or when I make mistakes. You know, like that's when you need it the most.
Yeah.
That's when love is the best. So
But when we mention like the sex game, and I even think about this saying now, like if you're good at like picking someone up, like, oh, he's got game.
yeah,
Like,
yeah,
it's not a game.
yeah,
It's
yeah.
not a game. Just be
Exactly.
who you are, and then if the other person can appreciate that, great. And
Yeah,
if not, then don't try to pretend you're something else so that they will hopefully appreciate you, because that isn't
yeah.
even you.
and
That's
th-
like,
and then so you get this perk from them, or you're like, oh,
yeah.
look at me, I'm with them, or like it's like a society thing too instead of a heart thing. And that's what's really wrong within society, is that our hearts are being bypassed by what we want, and then we cry about not getting this or cry about our life being a certain way. And it's like, but in a sense we create this. Like, we've created all this. Like, no matter what's happened in our life, we've created this and we can change it. And love is the one way to do so, and not through just sexual
Game.
expressions of it.
Game.
Sex game.
So that's the negative, and that's positive. So negative is, you've got a problem, it's your fault, you created it. I've got a problem, it's my fault, I created it, I brought this into my life. So that's like, oh man, that's a downer. But the positive is that we can also, heal
Yeah.
ourselves, and we can bring in, what our heart desires.
Yeah, a deeper sense of
And we
love.
first, you have to know, like, tune into your heart, what's
Yeah.
going on in there, and be
Give it.
connected with yourself. Give yourself acceptance, give yourself love, give yourself space to be all parts of yourself.
And it's funny too, the acceptance part, because listening to Jack Cornfield, one of his talks, acceptance is a hard one for people to do, because he's always like, like, I'm willing to accept this much, but no, like I can't accept that, because acceptance, I guess, is hard to bypass when you're dealing with, shame and self guilt and things like that. Like, it's hard when we've hurt people we love, and but yeah, by doing what we're doing, we're continuing the pain. Like, we could alleviate that pain
By
by
not doing that work,
yeah,
we're continuing the pain,
yeah, yeah,
and it's going to reincarnate in our life again and again until
yeah,
we can heal that. We
exactly,
can heal that template that keeps calling it into our life, until we can heal that template, and then you don't have to call
exactly.
in, because women will say, guys are all the same, they're all like XYZ, or guys will say like, oh, girls are all the same, they're all like, they all mess up this kind of way, or they all mess up that kind of way. Well, that's because we haven't done our work, so we keep pulling in that same situation. So we get rid of a partner, but then we get another partner with the same stuff because we haven't. It's not as simple as just like, psh, you're gone. It's
Yeah,
more complicated. It's about you discovering within yourself what's your whole self doing,
yeah,
and it's a step by step process, and you're never done, but you can get closer and closer, and it gives you benefits.
yeah. It's a lot of work, but it's very beneficial. It's it's more gratifying than all these self gratifying things, because they'll gratify you for the moment, but then where does it leave you with? And these are things that are questions that I think you should look at, because like what when you do those actions, there's negative consequences, there's negative feelings that come up with inside ourselves, and then yet we find it faults within the people that we love. So we'll look at, this thing's bothering me, so that's what's upsetting me, instead of like, it's because I did this, I hate myself for it, I'm angry at me for it, and now I'm trying to find some reason for it. It's not because I did this action that made me feel good, but no, egotistically, it made you feel good. Your heart and your love and your soul are all like, and it causes um,
The
it,
discord,
yeah,
depression, the
yeah,
anxiety, all that stuff that we don't want to look at. We don't want to see this,
yeah.
but
And sex game too. From my mentor, she said last like at least 3 days when you're separated from that person. Like, at least 3 days of like, you need to try to like. She would say like, you gotta cut the cord. So when she was like having
that
someone play
link
the sex
that you
game,
make between
yeah,
someone that
she'd be like, you gotta like, you just gotta picture like, cutting that penis off, like you've gotta like separate that, like, so that that game isn't being played through your head, because they're thinking these thoughts of you, and they'll try to permeate that into your head. And so one way to combat that is like, get rid of the sexual parts. if that makes sense. But yeah, it was,
Because it's something that happens on the level of the psyche. So the protection is
yeah.
also done at the level of the psyche.
And it can lead to suicide, lots of heavy depression, because you're just filled with all this love, but that's not love. It's like this um, insecure, not wanted, I guess, feeling.
And it's tuning into stuff that we haven't healed. And you mentioned suicide, and a friend of mine who he met this woman, and things were like so intense and so amazing and perfect for like, I don't know, 10 days or something. And then she waltzed out of his life without an explanation. And he said to me, he told me, he's like, I thought about killing myself. And I know this guy is not on any psychiatric meds, doesn't use drugs, doesn't drink. And I was just shocked. Like she did that to you in 10 days. But it had to be tuning into something within himself, which was not healed. And then he had to, his homework would have been to cut those ties that are between him and her so that he can be on his own and he can heal his own self
And those are
without.
yeah, and those are hard to do when you're like, but maybe this, but maybe we could make this, or maybe we could do this, like but maybe it was this is the fault, and
Oh, yeah, maybe
you,
if this happened a little
yeah,
differently,
yeah. So you
it
so
could have
you so
worked.
you kind of like get hesitant on doing that, and you're trying to go with that. You want it to be
So
this
you don't
way,
want to cut it because you're
yeah,
like, no, no, but there's a chance.
yeah. You're hoping for that
She's gonna
love,
wake up one day and then just say, "Oh, geez, I shouldn't have waltzed out of
yeah,
your life."
yeah. Like and like that wishful thinking and
Uh,
expectation and things
but
like
even
that
if
too.
that person does come back into your life, if it has any chance of working, you have to be healed.
Yeah,
And for you to heal, you have to cut all that stuff so you can actually heal your own self. And once you become healed, if they happen to reach back out, you're going to be in a solid place and you can make an informed, integrated, decision based on your heart, your head, everything, if what you want to do
yeah,
at that
if
point.
that happens. But usually at that point you've grown and shifted as well. So like you've each gone on like a different path, and when you've grown, when you're not together, like you've grown and then they have their own life and they try to come back to you, it's because they're just trying to take that back.
Mm.
You're strong again. They're like, I know how I can milk you.
Yeah.
Then so it's
And again, this could be conscious, it could be not so conscious,
yeah. But
but
but when you are more healed with inside yourself and working towards that, you have more skills and protection from that. So it's not as weary. It's not as
it's not as
scary.
dangerous.
Yeah,
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 yeah, yeah.
because you could see it and then you could respond accordingly instead of reactively. So
So that's our piece on the birds and the bees.
yeah, thanks for listening. Bye.